Okay, guys, so welcome everyone. Another beautiful time, beautiful webinar of the weekly fasting group. So before we start, I just want to let you know, especially for those who watch it later on YouTube, that those webinars are created by the weekly fasting group. So what's the weekly fasting group? It's a big online international community of people who practice fasting, and we fast as a group once a week for 24 hours. So that's the common denominator between all the people of this group. We don't have any special dietary requirements. We have people from different backgrounds, different spiritual backgrounds, different dietary backgrounds. So there is no agenda basically in this group. We just come every week between Friday and Saturday, and we fast for 24 hours. And in addition to that, there is a very interesting WhatsApp chat which belongs to this group, where we discuss different subjects related to healing, detox, different healing approaches, etc. And every Friday, we try to have a guest speaker on Zoom. So we record those webinars, put them on our YouTube channel, where we discuss different ideas, again, related to nutrition, spirituality, health in general. We invite different interesting people who share their wisdom. And again, there is no agenda, so we can have one day we can have raw vegan, and another day we have a carnivore, or the other day we can have a person who is not into diet at all, but just have different spiritual insights. So it's a group which is based on tolerance, basically love and tolerance. So and today we actually Alva is going to present our guests. So Alva, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So glad you all are with us, whether you're here or you're watching later. I'm happy, just over the moon, to share with you my beautiful friend, Neale, who is a jack of all trades, but most especially in helping us rise and shine and transform our world and consequently the larger world through different healing modalities, but in particular, one that he and our guest last week, Tracy Hamilton, his partner of several years, that they came up with together, or should I say, came through them together. And he's going to be talking to us about that day, sharing his amazing journey and giving us some tips on how to put it in, implement it into practice to make our world better. And he's going to start us off today, Tim. We're so honored that you're here with helping us just get centered in this time, in this space. He's going to lead us in a short meditation. And so, Tim, over to you, love.
Cool. Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here too. So what I would love to lead you in is a little practice we call the quiet place. And it's a really cool way to just really quieten your mind down quick. So it's really good to do pre-meditation, pre-reading a book, going to bed, anything where you really need to quieten the mind down. So if you'd like to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then just notice what you hear when you sit there with your eyes closed. So you can hear my voice. You may hear other things my end. You may hear things your end, and that's cool too. You can feel the temperature in the room. And you can feel yourself supported by wherever you're sat on. So you're fully awake, fully conscious. And then you'll notice you have thoughts. So all I want you to do for now is to just notice your thoughts. Just coming and going. So not to get into them, not to try and work out what they're about or what's causing them, or try to stop them. Because all I want you to do for now is to just notice your thoughts. Just coming and going. Then, as a thought comes in, just take your awareness off it to the background of silence, from where that thought came. And again, any more thoughts coming in? Just take your awareness off. To the background of silence. And start favoring, noticing that silence. And again, any more thoughts come in? Just take your awareness off to the background of silence. And allow that silence to expand as you focus in on it. And then what we're looking for is not total silence, but it's just not to be in your thoughts, not to be dragged around by your thoughts. So now you're in that place. I just want you to remember where that is and how you got there. And know that you can get back to that quiet place anytime you want by just taking yourself back there. So just enjoy that for a moment, and then in your own time, whenever you're ready, just slowly come back. And then open your eyes.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was incredible. Wow. Wow. It's feeling very relaxed.
Not too
Very
relaxed, I hope.
Yeah, no, not nap time, just really present, really, really present.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's
Wow.
what that's kind of the start of the work we do. It takes you to that place to get you out of your thoughts, so you're not being dragged around by those and triggering everything, so we can get into the truth of actually what's going on inside, which we'll get into later.
Cool. That's what I was going to say. Why don't you start with how about you fill us in on your story and what led you to developing the quiet place meditation and yeah, we just want to hear all about you.
Sure. So it's interesting. Where I am now is in a place where I've worked with hundreds of people. I help people transform all the time. I've worked all over the world on retreats and everything. And I look at that sometimes and think, is that real? Because it wasn't that way, trust me. And one of the things I love to do is to, when I put on the intro video, I'm the possibility of healing. I like to show that possibility, because I was in a really, really bad place, and to be able to come back from it as successfully as I have, where I've got zero trauma, I just like to show people that. So I'll just share my story with you just to show you the depths of where I ended up going to. So as a kid, I was really happy. Came from a big family, came from a big council estate. If you're in the States, that's like the projects, but it was a big place, loads of kids around, loads of fun, really enjoyed being a kid. And then I went to school, and I was looking forward to going to school because I'm very inquisitive, and my favorite question was why. So I thought, I can go to school and get all these answers and it's going to be great. And I got there and found out very quickly that wasn't the case. One of my first conversations with the teacher was, I stood up to go to the toilet and she was like, excuse me, you need to put your hand up. I went, why? And she said, because you need to. And I went, why? She goes, because you can't just get up and go to the toilet. I went, why? She went, because you can't. And I said, are you ever going to say no? And she said, no. I said, why do I have to ask then? So that was how I was, which didn't go down well at all. So I quickly got a name as being a bit of a pain to the teachers, and that was all right for a couple of years. But then I got a teacher who made it quite clear that wasn't going to happen. And he didn't like me at all, and he started to bully me. So I was 7 years old at the time. But you got to remember, it was the 70s, and it was very, very different to now. The teachers had all the power and nobody ever questioned them, really. And he was a bit of a tyrant. Anyway, one day he ran across the classroom, picked me up by my jacket, carried me outside, slammed me down on the floor and said, right, sit there till the next naughty kid comes out. And I'd had enough. So I lived next door to the school. So I ran home and I told my mum. And she didn't seem very happy with me, but she didn't say much. She said, wait till your dad gets home. So then my dad got home. She told him what had happened. And then they both laid into me because I'd been playing up a little bit, to be fair to them, and took me to school the next day, and they sided with the teacher. Now, just to make it clear, my mum and dad were really lovely people, really loving, really caring. But again, like I said, it was the 70s. Nobody questioned the teachers, and they didn't like authority at all. So they just sided with him. But in that moment, without exaggerating, it destroyed me. It absolutely destroyed me. The people who I thought were there to protect me went against me. Then all my family went against me. And then the neighbors went against me. And it was like, I suddenly lost everybody. That's what it felt like. I felt abandoned. And it was just so painful at the time. I was so angry and felt so mistreated. I decided to go mute. And I didn't speak for 6 weeks. I didn't speak to anybody for 6 weeks. And all I can remember of it, I blocked most of it out. I remember it when my mum was dying, bless her, she told me the whole story. So she must have carried it all of her life on some level, but she told me the whole thing. And she said, all I would do was lay in my bed and kick out at people. And that's the only thing I can remember. But then 6 weeks later, my mum's best mate's daughter my mum was having a haircut by her best mate. Her daughter overheard my mum saying, I can't believe Tim's still lying. And she went, what's Tim lying about? So she told her, and she went, I was in the classroom. I saw it happen. He didn't do that. Then everybody was sorry. But the damage was done. The damage was done. I had got to the point where I was just so angry all the time. I was having nightmares. I was having daymares. I got echoing voices in my head. I couldn't control my moods anymore. I went from being the most loving, friendly kid at school to just being violent. I just couldn't handle anything. I was just kicking out at everybody and lashing out at everybody. And I didn't speak for the first week I went back to school, apparently, but I got a standing teacher called Mrs. Clark. I still remember her now. I can still remember her face. I bet she was only about 22, bless her. But because she was young, she wondered what was wrong with me. And she asked if I was like, I got learning difficulties or needed some extra support. So my mom told her what had happened. And I don't know what she did, but she got me talking again. But again, I was such a mess. So long story short, I had a hell of a time at school. Didn't turn out well. Didn't get any qualifications, nothing. I just turned into trouble. Then I left school at 16 and was quite mouthy and acting a lot tougher than what I really was all the time. And me and my mates were uptown and somebody said something and I shouted to me back at this kid and we got chased by a gang of men and they caught us. There was about 30 of them and they started flicking knives and baseball bats and stuff. And they ended up just walking away and leaving us, but I ended up with PTSD. So now I'd got anxiety, depression, having panic attacks all the time. I got PTSD. I didn't go out. I didn't want to go on holiday anymore. I didn't go to the shops. I didn't go to town. I stopped playing in my band. I just stopped living. you know, and that kind of carried on until I was about 18 and I discovered alcohol. So I just ended up being drunk all the time. This went to 25 and that turned to drugs, party drugs. So I ended up self-medicating with booze and party drugs, basically. But then in a weird way, I found myself inside of that space because all of a sudden that took my inhibitions away that I'd had all this time, and it took the anxiety and all the rest of it away. So I ended up being a dancer and a DJ of all things. Right. And I really found myself, like, I didn't know that existed within me to be that confident and to do those kinds of things. And I ended up playing in Vancouver, America. I played all over the UK. I made it big time at the time. So I'd go from playing like to 1,000 people or 2,000 people on a Saturday night. But then on Monday, I'd go back to work, and I was a team leader for a programming company. I'd go back and I couldn't lead my 5 people because I was so worried about what they thought about me that I couldn't function. If I had to speak in front of people or do anything to do with anything social, I couldn't deal with it because I had such bad social anxiety. So I just ended up in such a mess. And then I just pushed it and pushed it and pushed it and I got to the point where I OD'd at a party and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I just cannot do this anymore. So then I ended up going to the doctors, and my girlfriend said to me at the time, just go to the doctors. I think you've something wrong with you. So anyway, the doctor gave me this nice label I could live into, which was clinical depression, which I did a great job of for a few months. And then I was just like, this isn't working. I went to see therapists and counselors and all sorts, and they just annoyed me. And then she found me this guy called Roy. And Roy, I think Roy was into Tony Robbins and all that kind of stuff because that's the way he used to talk. Roy taught me to take my power back a little bit. And then I started going back up, right? So then I ended up getting into Tony Robbins, and I ended up working out at the back of his seminars and anything. Then I trained as a life coach. Then I went to an NLP therapist and I liked what he did. So then I ended up training with him and did my practitioner and master practitioner. I learned hypnotherapy. I did tapping, EFT, Sedona method, landmark forum, you name it. But all of that was all based around thought. So I did 13 years of this. I spent £45,000 over 13 years doing this stuff. And I wasn't particularly getting anywhere, if I'm honest. I was learning how to deal with it better. Now, how many times do we hear that? We've got to cope, right? Especially when it comes to mental health kind of stuff like anxiety, depression, whatever, which I don't actually term mental health in my world. It's emotional well-being, but that's another bit later conversation maybe. But anyway, I did 13 years of that, and I kind of got to the point where I could cope. So I had my morning routine, and I got these things that I used to do that allowed me to cope. Then my sister-in-law told me about this amazing guy called Tom, who was running this course in London, and I'd about given up, to be honest. I was getting to the point where I was like, maybe this is just who I am. Maybe this is just the best I can be. You know, I'm better than I used to be. I'm not so depressed, and I'm not so anxious, and still not great socially and whatever, but I'm all right. And I was about to give up. And then I went to his course in London, and he took things from the mind and taught me about the feeling system, and taught me about the somatic kind of feeling system and how to truly feel things and how to process emotion. And I had 2 days with him. And after those 2 days, pretty much everything I'd ever dealt with was gone. I had no more anxiety, no more depression, no more panic attacks, no more social anxiety. And none of that stuff, that was 10 years ago. None of that stuff came back ever. I'm not saying it was perfect and I didn't get it all in that weekend, but the vast majority of that had gone in the weekend. So I got obsessed with this. So I asked him, can I be a coach? So I ended up training with him and mentoring with him for a year. And then, but there were some bits about it. And by the way, I met Tracy on the course. So me and Tracy just gravitated to each other. We ended up sat opposite each other at lunch. And I couldn't look her in the eye because my social anxiety was still quite bad then. I was struggling to look her in the eye, and she always reminds me of that. And, but there was something about her, and I was like, I'm going to be doing something with you. There was just a feeling in my heart. And she thought the same. So we swapped Facebook details, and then we hooked up on Facebook, and we told each other that we'd both had that feeling. So anyway, 3 years later, she came back from New Zealand and she rang me and she was like, are you still doing what we were taught? And I went, kind of. And she went, yeah, me too. She goes, have you changed much? I went, most of it. She went, me too. She goes, what's the main difference? I went, I've made it all about the client, not about me. And I said, and it works way better. She goes, so have I. We compared notes and we'd pretty much created the same thing. So we decided to get in together and do it together. So that was kind of the beginnings of Trinity Coherence, which is what we've created now. And that kind of brought us up to today, where we're twinnies. We call each other Twinny because we're inseparable twins, and we go through all the same experiences and anything. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. And what's interesting as well is I was a software engineer before. In fact, I started out being an engineer. I was a mechanical engineer. Then I was a software engineer. And then what Tom taught us was human software engineering. So I ended up being a human. So I went engineer, software engineer, human software engineer. And but the software engineering is really powerful because I literally debug people's human software. That's how I kind of work with people, is to find out where the bugs are, because there's nothing wrong with anyone. I hate that when people think there's something wrong, something broken. There's nothing wrong or broken. There's just some imbalances that just need tweaking a little bit. And I approach it the same as debugging software, which is interesting.
Fascinating, fascinating story. So do you want to like fast forward and tell us like Tracy told us a little bit about Trinity Coherence, and you just gave us a beautiful introduction of how, I love how you gave us the background about your story. So this isn't like just one more tool that someone's telling us about that might work. And then you actually gave us, like you created a really beautiful picture of how it does change, and it can change some really deep, like old traumas. And I love that you shared with us that no one is broken, so just like you said, you just need to debug, if you will, or update the software. So can you, for those who didn't attend and maybe didn't watch Tracy last year, can you tell us about Trinity Coherence and how that is transforming? I know you said clients, but like give us what that would look like in a session with you or in our lives.
Yeah, sure. We'll show the radical difference between that and therapy. Our beautiful friend Kim.
Yes.
Kim doesn't mind me sharing a story. I've got full permission to share it. So Kim showed up to me and she had anxiety disorder, depression, bipolar, complex PTSD, and borderline personality disorder. And she'd been written off sick for the rest of her life, basically. And she said, I don't think it'll help. Nothing's ever helped me. She said, I've been to counseling for years and everything. So just as a rough example, we did 10 sessions. She went back to a psychologist who didn't even recognize her when she came in. And he tested her and she tested clear of everything.
Wow. And
the difference is, I don't go for the mind. The mind is a slave. And when I say a slave, I mean, let me put it in terms of cleansing. Right? Most people who don't know anything about cleansing, right? If they get a rash on their arm, they'll go to the doctors and get some steroid cream or something and try and get rid of the rash. Whereas us cleansers, no, that's probably more of a digestive problem. And if we cleanse, it will clear up. It's very much the same, right? The problem isn't in the mind. The mind is just reacting to the overwhelmed emotional system most of the time.
Okay.
I'm not saying there's never a problem in the mind, but I've worked with nearly 800 people and I've only had a couple where it wasn't that case. It's usually an overwhelmed nervous system. And then what we do is we feel horrible. Now our mind's always trying to figure out, why do I feel like this? It's taking the information in from the five senses and it's trying to make sense of it. It's trying to build your version of the world from it. And if it doesn't make sense, it looks for a reason why. So if you're there with your grandbabies and you're having a good time and you've got a nice house and everything's fine, but you feel like crap, your brain's like, hang on, everything looks all right. You know, what's wrong? And it'll get stuck in that loop, the feeling loop of I feel terrible. So it'll start thinking, why do I feel like that? I think, and then because you're feeling terrible, it'll filter more terrible thoughts out. And then you look at the terrible thoughts and then it makes you feel terrible. And you get stuck in a, as Joe Dispenza calls, the think feeling loop. You know, and that's why most therapies don't work, because most people are just trying to figure out, why do I think this? But that's like trying to work out why there's a problem on your skin when there's nothing wrong with your skin. It's just exhibiting a digestive problem that's then some poison coming out through your skin. Same. It's just the same thing. So we never, ever, ever come from the mind, and people always show up with a busy mind. That's what the quiet place is for. The quiet place is for to get you out your busy mind into your body so you can learn to speak the language of the body, which is feelings, not the language in the mind, which are thoughts. You know, but trying to figure out why something's thinking something that's not even really thinking it in the first place, it's just on an auto loop, is ludicrous. And it's why people get nowhere. It's why I spent 13 years trying to figure it out. And one weekend, my mind's gone from the busiest thing in the world to quiet. The amount of sessions I do with people, they'll come with, the main thing I want to do is clear my mind. I'm like, right, we're not even going to go near your mind, but I guarantee you it will be clear. You know, you resolve the trauma in the body and then the mind's clear, because now they look out at the world and it makes sense. So there's nothing to think about. Now you can employ thought in a useful sense. You can think about whatever you want to think about, or just be nice and quiet.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? So talk about, so Trinity Coherence. When I think of Trinity, I think of three. So I'm presuming that body is one of the three. What are the components of Trinity Coherence, and what is that exactly?
Okay, so you've got mental awareness.
Okay.
So this is the thoughts, the meanings, the beliefs, the narratives and stories you tell yourself about all of that stuff, which then form your identity. Right? Your identity is where you get your sense of self from. And then that forms your self-image. So your self-image is like the blueprint that you create from. So if you see yourself as confident, you'll create confidence. You know, if you see yourself as a victim, you'll create victim. You know, whatever you, and it's got loads of different things. It's the way your height, your weight, your body composition, how you think you look, if you think you're sexy or not, if you like, it's everything. Is how you show up from that blueprint. So it's so important for that blueprint to be right. But again, we don't start there, because this thing gets affected so much by what's going on everywhere else with the other two parts. So the other two parts are emotional awareness, right? So emotional awareness is how you feel. It's the level of vibration you're tuning into, right? Because you think about it, emotions are a human construct. You know, something like happiness, sadness, and whatever doesn't exist in truth. It's just words we've given a certain vibration we're feeling. Okay. So the actual truth is the vibration you're feeling, which, if you want to use the words, goes from guilt and shame right up to joy and peace and everything in between. Right. Okay. So that's the emotional awareness, is that feeling. But then the level we go down to, which most people don't go to is sensory awareness. So that's the somatic feeling. That's the feeling level experience. Where do you feel it in your body? And we all know we get these things, you know, when your throat goes tight or your chest goes tight, or you get the ball in your stomach, or somewhere you'll get some kind of tension, or your shoulders are tight, you know, wherever it shows up, you know. And again, we do teach people to speak the language of the body. So all of those places in the body have a meaning and give us some really deep insight into what's actually causing it in the first place. So where we start is actually, we'll use the mental awareness to trigger something. You know, so I might say, so if you come to me and say, I've got this person in my life who just drives me crazy, I'll say to you, right, give me a situation, a real situation where they drive you crazy. Tell me about it. And then I'll tell you about it, and I'll look at your body language. And when you get triggered, I'll be like, Okay, what's the emotion? So you might be frustration. Okay, frustration. Where do you feel frustrated? And it might be like in my solar plexus or something. So then what we do is teach the techniques to go inside and process that and actually sit with it. Because a lot of, you hear about it a lot, don't you? Just lean into it and just sit with it. But what does that really mean?
Yes.
Because you've got to remember what's going on there is protection. So if your body senses you're trying to take protection away, then it tries to, we're deeply conditioned to move away from that pain, right? So that's what we teach, is how to sit there with it and be safe, because your body needs to feel emotionally safe. It's one of the prime directives. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've got survival at the bottom and then safety. And safety, physical safety and emotional safety. If you don't feel emotionally safe, the rest of it don't matter. Your body will prioritize that over happiness, over love, over achievement, over money, over anything. Because it's a primary survival. You know, it's
So
like
true.
you need to be safe.
So
And this is
true.
why people get stuck. You know, so you can do all the mindset in the world. If you're trying to force yourself into a situation, like for instance, say me and you are at the beach, and I go, fancy going and get an ice cream? And you're like, yeah. And we turn around and a car goes, meow, and you jump out of the way and it just misses you. That system hasn't got time to think. That nervous system reaction hasn't got time to think, because if you went, oh, is that a car I'm hearing? Is it a horn? Is it close? Is it? Boom. You got, you have to react. And that's what you're up against, because the safety system plugs into that within the fight, flight, freeze and flee system, overrides anything, overrides your thinking mind. So you can try and think your way out of something, but if this system's triggered, it will override it and get you to safety. Right. So safety for me didn't used to be speaking like this. Like, this was my worst nightmare. Serious. You know, and now I love it. I love it. I couldn't be happier to be here talking to you all. You know, it really is my passion. But I can remember speaking at a breakfast meeting once, and I got up to speak in front of, there's probably about 100 people there. It was quite a big seminar one. And I went to speak and no noise came out of my mouth. And then I just ended up melting down completely. And I had to leave. I had to leave the room with all my colleagues watching me, and just embarrassingly leave, run, get in my car, sat there crying for 5 minutes because I've just ruined all my business opportunities for the last year, and drove off beating the crap out of myself. That used to be my experience of speaking in front of people, because it didn't feel safe. It did not feel safe at all. So my body did what it took to get me out of there and just ran away. Fight, flight. That one was flight.
Yeah. It's interesting that Tracy said similar, that she wasn't into public speaking too, and you both do it so well. Thank you so much for sharing those intimate details of your story, and then painting that picture of the mental awareness, emotional awareness, and then sensory feeling awareness, and the importance of that, and how the process, I know like, we don't know all of the process, but like it's very key to create that safety in order for us to move forward. So I want to open it up to the group and see if anyone has questions. You can either post them in the chat, or feel free to pop yourself off mute and come on camera if you choose, and ask Tim. Because as y'all know, I could ask questions all day, but I'd like this to be an inclusive experience.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
I wanted to have a more specific example of you saying how to treat anxiety, like, or frustration, or what does it mean to sit with the emotion?
So like I said, like for instance, if you came with me with frustration, I'd go, okay, give me an example of something that frustrates you. And we usually have a go-to one, right? So when I went on the course, my go-to thing was when I got attacked that time, because it used to rule my life. You know, if I saw a group of people stood around, I'd avoid it. If I heard loud noise, I'd avoid it. So it was there constantly. So I imagined when it actually happened. And then I was like, he goes, what's the emotion? I said, deep fear. So he's like, right, where do you feel the fear? And that feels in my throat. And it was like someone strangling me. It was like ridiculously strong. Now, the thing is, what you're deeply programmed to do is to move away from pain. So if you think about it, when you're little, you put your hands on hot things, you trap your fingers, you fall off your bike, you fall out of a tree, you trip over and hurt your knee. You learn not to do that. You learn that hurts. I don't want to do it. So then the thing is, in the physical world, that's great. That's a really good strategy. Otherwise, you're going to destroy your body and it's not good. The thing is, emotionally, it's the opposite to what you need to do, because emotionally, you need completion with things. If you don't complete it, you take it in and store it. Right?
Closure.
Yeah. You need, but not in your mind. This is where most people get it wrong. You do it in your mind, but you can do it in your mind. We can all let go of things in our mind, but you've got to let go of it on a feeling level. If you don't, you carry that. And I call it a splinter. So if you think about a wooden splinter, right? Big piece of wood comes along, hits you, bit breaks off and goes in. And now it hurts. So now you keep people away from it and you stay away from it because it hurts and we don't like to feel pain. Give it a few weeks and you can probably touch it and now it feels okay. But if someone comes and grabs you right on it, you still jump because it's still there and it hurts. So emotional splinters are no different, right? We can deal with so much emotion, but when it's more than we can deal with, that's trauma in my definition. So it doesn't need to be a massive thing. It's just more than you can deal with in that moment. And that energy has to go somewhere. So we take it inside, right? And that's the splinter. Now, when someone triggers it, so when somebody looks like it, sounds like it, smells like it, reminds you of it in some way, it could be a song on the radio. It could be the smell of some food or perfume or something. It could be a look somebody gives you. It could be something somebody says, something you hear on telly, anything. When that triggers, your unconscious mind has no concept of time and space. So it just recalls it as if it really just happened now. So then you get it replays the same emotion to you. Right. So then I would have the exact same reaction as when I was getting attacked. Even if I wasn't getting attacked, I could just, it might be people having fun shouting about. So then you use that. But the thing is, I want to get away from there, right? Do you think I want to feel that feeling? Nope. Right. So you do anything you can to distract yourself. So some people play video games, some people watch films, some people take drugs, some people drink, some people, whatever you do. There's a million ways to.
Running away. That's running away.
Some people eat. You know, it's like whatever it is that numbs you out and stops you having to feel it, you'll do. And that's what we teach, is the opposite, is how to safely feel that. Because when you can learn to safely feel it and get your body to get used to feeling it, then when you go back and feel your way through it, it completes the feeling level experience. You kind of meet it and love it and accept it and let that part of you reintegrate into you. Because when you've got a splinter, say that splinter with me, like I'm quite extrovert and I quite like being in front of people. I was a DJ for years and I've been in bands and stuff and I loved it, but I hated it. Now I love it because now I can do it and like, there's no fear. It's just excitement. You know, when I was waiting to come on the call, I'm just sat here and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. It's like, it's an exciting thing now because that splinter used to be so painful that I'd do anything to stay away from it. So it stopped me being me. You know, but once I had pulled that out and integrated that bit back into me, now I can be me. You know, so it's a really hard thing to put into words because it's more of an experiential thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to figure out how to apply it practically. Like, could I give an example? I mean, just something that's not, for instance, I spoke today with my parents, and there's always something there. And afterwards, you know, either we just, you know, just not touch. It's like they're like mines. We shouldn't touch things that we can't speak about, taboos. Like, if we don't speak about it, everything is okay. So sometimes we touch it, and then afterwards, you know, it's, I have inconvenient feelings, you know, upset, and also them. So
Okay.
how
So-
did you avoid that?
So just close your eyes for me, and just go to the quiet place that we did at the beginning. And then what I want you to do is just take yourself back to the last time you were with your parents, and go to the point where you touched that and you got those inconvenient feelings. And then what I want you to do is allow yourself to feel the inconvenient feelings. And when you can feel them, what's the emotion?
I don't know.
Can you feel it?
It's tension.
Okay, where do you feel the tension?
I think in the chest and in the shoulders.
Perfect. Where's the strongest?
Shoulders.
Perfect. So pop your awareness on the point where you can feel it in your shoulders, where it's the most intense.
I think behind my neck.
Perfect. So just pop your attention there, and then just allow yourself to feel it. So you're not trying to do anything to it or get rid of it. All you're doing is you're just feeling it. And you'll notice after a while it'll start to soften. So when it starts to soften, let me know.
I think it's better now.
Perfect. So just take your awareness a little bit closer to it now. Just focusing on it.
Feel more relaxed.
Perfect.
So that's the point, opposite of what happens physically, just like you said it. Just be with it and not try to repress it.
Yeah, and not try and get rid of it either. Because if you think of the energy of, if someone's trying to get rid of you, what do you want to do? You want to hang on, right? And it's the same with the energies. They're part of you. They're a protection mechanism within you. So there's nothing to get rid of. It's to just notice it and allow that energy to transmute within you so it becomes integrated back into you. Right. And stuff in the neck and shoulders is usually around unresolved past hurts. Because the body's quite practical in its in the way it works. So if you think about it, if your neck's a bit stiff, it stops you turning your head so you can't see the past.
Yeah.
So that's just a little taste, but it's kind of going through a situation like you've got there and just unwiring all of that, pulling those splinters out and just setting yourself free. Because when you no longer have the feeling, then you're free to express yourself however you want to in that moment. And it doesn't, and what often happens is in situations between two parties, it works a bit like fire, right? So for fire to burn, you need oxygen, you need fuel, and you need heat, right? You take one of them out, what happens?
There's no fire.
Yeah. And when you're in a situation with somebody else and you take the heat out of it, it often takes the fire out. And when you're non-reactive and you can just respond with love to the other person, no matter what they throw at you, they soon stop throwing stuff because they get bored, because they're getting no reaction. You know, so it's powerful stuff. I was so reactive before I did this, and now I very seldom react to people. I always know it's their stuff. It's not mine. I'm cool. I've got no beef with anyone. I've just got love for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's just
Thank you, Vital. That was beautiful. Thank you, Tim, for showing that to us, and for Vital for your willingness to be so courageous and transparent here. That was wonderful. Great question.
yeah, it is amazing, all these special healing modalities. The true, actually, the true health and psychology, like doctors and psychologists, they treat the symptoms. They don't really treat the problem. Get the root of the problem and solve it. Like they, just like you said with the skin, they just deal with the symptoms, and then
because we start with this stuff, clear all that out, then we teach mindset. Because doing mindset on top of trauma is like, you imagine I'm a running coach and you come to me and you say, I want to learn how to run better, and you've got a drawing pin stuck in the bottom of your foot. It's like me trying to teach you running techniques so you don't press the drawing pin, rather than just saying, right, well, let's start off by taking the drawing pin out of your foot.
That might make much more sense.
Yeah. It's the same thing, because trauma and the systems in your body that deal with trauma will override everything. They're survival mechanisms. They're designed to do that. They're your reptilian part of your brain. They're hardwired into you, so trying to fight them you're never going to win. But when you learn how to speak their language and to resolve all of that stuff, then you set yourself free. I mean,
that's powerful.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Revital, did you have anything else before I open the floor to if anyone else has a question?
I'm just enjoying listening to all this wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? We're a quiet bunch. You got us all in the quiet space here, Tim.
That's the trouble. I've shot myself in the foot.
You can tell them to come out of it. They're still that.
Yeah. So I know that you did a was it a 56-day juice cleanse, and you had like some kind of powerful breakthrough. Since we are a group that, as Arik said in the beginning, on Fridays, we're an international group, and people fast, some people juice, fast, some people, like I eat a particular fruit that day and water, or sometimes water fast. Tell us about that experience. Because I know that, like, you alluded to it, but and Revital's question was very powerful as well. Oftentimes when we are fasting or cleansing physically, that brings up old emotional stuff, mental stuff that we don't, we find challenging to be with. I noticed that sometimes pockets of anger like pop up for me, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, it's like I feel like a soda can, like somebody shifts me, and I'm like, And I sometimes, most of the time I'm alone, like when that happens, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then I'm like, oh, this is emotional detox. So yeah, why don't you tell us about that? We'd love to hear.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a good example of both before and after, because I've got quite a long history of cleansing. I probably started 20 years ago. I did a colon cleanse, and then I did a juice fast, and then I did a water cleanse. I've done a few things over the years, and those first few I found really hard, like especially the colon cleanse. That was really hard. That was the first thing I ever did, really. And I could do a few days of things, but then I'd always end up tripping myself up and eating something or having something I shouldn't, and then thinking, oh, hell to it, I'll just leave it. And then I hadn't done one for a bit, and then I learned how to work, and then spent 5-6 years developing it. And then I joined Royal Vegan Heroes and did that 57-day juice fast. And it was funny because when Aline welcomed me in, she kept calling me a brave warrior and a hero and things. And I'm like, but it's not brave, because brave requires fear. There is no bravery without fear, because you can't be brave if something's just easy. That's not brave. And I kept saying to her, I don't feel brave because I'm not finding this hard at all. So the first 30-40 days were really easy and I had nothing at all. But then I started letting go of a lot of plaque. Once we got into the bentonite clay part and all of that, I started getting a lot of plaque coming out. And every time I had a release, I would like, it was making me feel really ill. Like it was putting me on the settee or into bed feeling sick. And then I was having emotions come up. And like you say, I don't see any delimited zone between the mind and the body. The mind and the body are one thing. So when one can affect the other and the other can affect the other, it goes both ways. And so sometimes when I've been working with people, when they release emotions, they'll have a big shift in their body. I once had a lady who had totally frozen shoulders. She was told they didn't think she would ever get her shoulder back. They were going to offer her this horrific operation where they take the shoulder apart and try and fix it. And it got something like a 40% chance of working, and the other 60 meant she'd have no shoulder. And she came to see me. We did the work. And long story short, at the end, I went, how's your shoulder? And she went, oh my God. And it was back. So the mind and the emotions can fully affect the body, but the body can fully affect the emotions and the mind as well. So, and I was having that experience, but I was just processing it. But then something really weird happened, because I've done so much of this work. I don't often have big breakthroughs anymore. But I did have one big breakthrough. It was on about day 50, I think. And it was in lockdown. And our shaman was leaving to go to South America. So we were naughty and we were going to go and see him. And they're all my plant medicine family. They're the people that I journey with and stuff. So I was so excited to go and see him. But the day before, I'd had a massive plaque release and I'd gone really quiet. And I hadn't noticed I'd gone quiet. But then when I looked back after it, I noticed that that day I'd been to the office, and I'm normally the life and soul and messing about and playing jokes on people and stuff in the office. I just sat there in the corner and I was quiet. And there was nothing wrong. I was just quiet. And then I went to see my friend at night and he was like, you're a bit quiet. Still didn't think anything of it. I got to Neale's house, the shaman, and these people I've been on the deepest experiences with, I'd got nothing to say and I was super quiet. And it was a really awkward experience. And then I went home and then I beat myself up a little bit because I was like, oh God, why is I so quiet? And then I woke up in the morning and I just it felt like I was wearing a mask, like an acting mask that went over my nose and my eyes and everything. And my nose was really strong as well. Now, in metaphysics that I teach people about speaking the language of the body, face and a mask feeling is usually when you're not being yourself and you're putting a mask on, literally. A nose is quite unique. Nose is suppressed emotion, but it's a specific type. So it's suppressed emotion in people who are a bit oversensitive. So those oversensitive souls tend to feel pain a lot more. So we tend to stuff stuff down a lot more as well. So nose is that coming out. And I'm very, very sensitive, which is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing for the work I do, but it's been a curse when I was a child. But anyway, I'm glad it is that way now. But anyway, so I processed that stuff on my nose, and it turned out I suddenly got this vision of, because what happens as well is people try and work stuff out in their mind, right? When you process the emotion, part of the protection mechanism is that you get a scitoma, to a blind spot to that scitoma, sorry, a blind spot to that thing. So part of the protection is your mind stops you being able to access it. But when you pull the splinter out and the pain goes away, then you get the conscious awareness of it. So as those things processed, I suddenly got a vision of me acting tough at school because I had to. The environment I was in, I just had to act tough. Our school was tough. So that was the mask. That was the mask I was wearing, was that tough. And I'm not tough. I'm a lover, not a fighter, as somebody once famously said. And the nose was me suppressing that sensitivity to be tough. And as I let that go, oh my gosh, that was like one of the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had. And then the rest of my juice fast was just so blissfully easy. Yeah. And then funny enough, when I was having the plaque releases, the sickness went away. It was just easy.
Wow, thank you. That was a fabulous story.
Thank you.
Wow, we really so appreciate you being here. Does anyone else have any questions? Be sure, we definitely want to get your contact information if people want to go. I know you gave us the website, but if people want to schedule an appointment with you, a discovery call.
Yeah, sure. I'll send you some links after.
Okay, perfect. That'll be great.
But if you want to talk to me now, I promise I won't do the quiet place thing with you. You can just ask a question.
Yeah, I love that. I guess I'll talk until someone says something. I love that I've noticed that myself, like I've lived in my head a lot over the years and dropping into my body. I enjoy it. I enjoy like when I have the breakthrough. I'm not saying it always feels good. I love like finally not trying to figure it out in my head. Finally.
Yeah.
And I appreciate something that you just shared though. This is where I'm going with this, is that you said that the mind, like sometimes when I sit quiet I can feel something happening in the body or some discomfort and try to figure out what's going on so that I can release it, right? Because I know something is up. All of a sudden there'll just be space in the head and nothing. And I'm like, no, I know something is happening in there. And I appreciate the piece that you just gave me, is that I sensed that it was a protection, not at first, right? Because it brings up agitation and frustration, but it's like, oh, you don't want to go there. And so I'll notice then distraction will happen. If I can just sit with it long enough, eventually it will open. And what I'm also learning to do is not to force, to be gentle and just be like, okay, if now's not the right time, then, I just try to remind myself, I love you. I'm here.
Yeah.
How can I support you? And I appreciate, for me, the safety really resonates, because I find myself now it's not anything that I thought about. I don't even know where it came from. I just have found myself in the last few months putting my hand on my heart and my belly and saying, I love you, I'm here, I'm safe. And that was strange to me, but I am having some flashbacks in some work that I'm doing of things very young in my life that made me feel unsafe. And so it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, I don't think I would have ever said I grew up in an unsafe environment, because it was just me and my mom, you know what I mean, for the most part. And you're right, like I can see that I've grown up with that. And if I'm honest, ooh, I feel really shaky, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'd like to have that conversation with my daughter, because I was a single parent and for 7 years, well, all their lives, but
Yeah,
she
yeah.
and I, have 7 years together. I imagine that she grew up feeling unsafe as well. So I got a little tinge of like, oh my God, I passed that on to her, to both of my kids, actually. So, yeah.
So remember, safety is relative. So what I mean by that is, do you know what? Often the people who struggle the most when they come for a session are people who've not been through much, because their relative safety is, a lot of things seem unsafe, whereas if you've been through, like I always say, I've gone from living hell to heaven on earth. That hell made me strong.
Yeah, for sure. Me
So
too.
now when something comes along, it has to be really big to even bother me, because relatively it's no in it. But if the worst thing you've ever had is you lost a pet, or something went wrong at school, a little tiny thing, but everything else has been great, and you had an amazing supportive family and everything, then other things can seem relatively much bigger. Not judging anything, it is what it is, but it's like, it is relative. It's relative to you. It's every single person's different,
Absolutely.
What might terrify you, I might look at and go, what? And what might terrify me, you might look at and go, what? It's all,
yeah.
we're all so unique. You never know. But
yeah.
but what's a good technique? I don't know if you've come across Ho'oponopono.
Yes. I love Ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
You want to
With
share
what you're
that?
talking,
I was meant to post that because Tracy mentioned it last week, and I meant to post it in the group. So if you'll talk about it, I'll go ahead and post it today. I'll post the Ho'oponopono.
yeah. So it's a traditional Hawaiian practice, and it's just a way of, it's very similar to the work we do, but it requires no consciousness and no understanding of what you're doing. It's just a little 4-step mantra kind of thing. So you just start off with, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. So if you do that, if you hold a thought of your daughter in your mind and just say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So it's like, I'm sorry for my lack of awareness in this situation. Please forgive me. Thank you for your patience and for putting up with me and all of that kind of stuff. I love you. And if you do that, when I first learned how to do it, I did it thinking of each person I'd ever had any beef with in my life, anything where anything had gone wrong, to myself, around accepting anything around myself and accepting any situation I'd ever been in, and especially the ones that I was ashamed of or anything like that, and just go around and forgive it all. And it's one of them things that you think sounds a little bit twee and a bit whatever, but it's powerful. It's, I was doing it. I went for a walk through the week and I was doing it for the people in our community. And on the Monday night when I ran the workshop, I was like, did anyone have anything happen this weekend? And one of the ladies went, I've had this turnaround. This client's just suddenly been saying no, and they've come back yes. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Who knows if it's connected, but.
Well, everything is energy, right? So
yeah. But it's, and that's the point. It changes your vibration.
Yeah.
It gets you out of shame.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I will share that in the group. And just briefly, before we wrap up, I'll share a quick story about Ho'oponopono. So there is a doctor, and I've forgotten his name, but I can provide a link for that as well. And he was working in an asylum, and there were tons of patients in this particular facility, and he had all of these files in his office. And instead of seeing the patients and treating them face to face, he did Ho'oponopono, which is an ancient a Hawaiian prayer mantra, if you will. There's a meditation and all of that stuff. It has a fascinating story, but in particular, this particular doctor, he did each file. And my assumption is he did it every single day. Over time, every patient in that facility was healed and the place shut down. And so that is, I know, like for us, you know, for at least I'll just say for myself, since I live in the United States, as a Westerner, at first when I heard that, I was like, what? That can't be true. You know what I mean? And then, you know, I did do some research on it, and it is something that I have been doing off and on for years. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I'll have a few moments after this call to do that as I'm putting my grandson to sleep, because I do feel some embarrassment about of like for my daughter. Well, not embarrassment, but she did have some traumas. I had a stroke when she was 4. And then we were in a really a major car accident when she was 5. And it was traumatic for both of us. Definitely I could see how, and my son, who was born 7 years later, I mean, not 7 years later, but, you know, he had no part in the accident. He wasn't even conceived at the time. He actually had some trauma from that as well, because whenever I would go out as an adult, he would have a holy come apart because he thought I would die and never come back. So it'll be interesting. I'll keep you updated on, you know, doing that around the trauma that created. But I just wanted you guys to know, when I post it, I'll see if I can find the whole story and post that, but definitely the mantra, that it is a really powerful, as Revital said, so many amazing tools that are here. As Tim said, with his picture, to help us transform our inside world, which then, you know, affects the whole in ways that we couldn't possibly imagine, but transform the world to be a better place for all of us. So do you have any closing remarks before we end?
Me and Tracy are notoriously bad at endings. You know what we end up doing on the end of our workshops?
What?
We'll like look at each other and go, is that it? And they'll go, yeah, and we'll go, the end.
Well, we just really want to thank you for being here. All of having you and Tracy back to back is such a wonderful, wonderful treat. As Tim said, he'll give us his information, and I'll share it with Arik so that when he posts the video, that it's there. We really want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world. And then one thing you didn't share is that you created a community. I think you were alluding to that when you were talking about being the software engineering rise and shine. Tracy said she would leave that to you. So that can be your closing remark. You can tell us a little bit about shine and how people can find it. And again, Arik will share those links when he puts up the video. Perfect. And Arik, I'm going to leave it to you after Tim shares about Rise and Shine.
Okay.
Perfect. So it's usually Tracy who talks community. So that's why I forgot. Thank you for reminding me. So, so we often got, when we'd been working with people often said to us, whether it be in person on retreats or workshops or whatever, is there any way where you can hang out with you and just keep up to date with what you're teaching and what you're learning and stuff? So we talked about a community for a long time, but we didn't want to use Facebook, because from some other groups we were in, we knew that they're listening into everything you're talking about, and people had some concerns around privacy with that. So I'm a software engineer by trade, like I said, and so I built as our own community. So the community is called Rising Stars, and it's a community of self-empowerment. We teach all the stuff I've been talking about in there. There's 2 or 3 courses in there already. They're self-led courses. So as part of your membership, there's a learning management system. You get access to that. So there's a Be Who You Really Are course, which is teaching you the tools and techniques I'm talking about on here. There's a course, the Splinter List, which is then how to use that tool to go and clear all your past, present, future up. And I'm just producing Express Yourself at the moment, which is a public speaking workshop, because that's one of my real passions, because that's been my biggest thing I've got over and the thing I love doing the most. So There's a welcome to the community course as well, which teaches you how to use all the community and everything, and an introduction. So we're quite small still at the moment, but we have 2 weekly workshops on Zoom, very much like this. There's probably about 10, 15 people come to those workshops, and they get a lot of value from them. So that's kind of where we are with it. It's only £22 a month, and you get a lot of value for that. So we've not pushed it at all. We've only finished this last week. All the courses and everything got finished last week. So we're actually opening the doors properly next week. So it's very early on still. So you get lots of attention if you join now, because there's not many people. So yeah, that's it. You'd be more than welcome, everybody. You can join for as long or as short as you like. We're not about keeping people forever. We just empower people, get you self-empowered, and then get on your way if you like, or you can stay with us. A lot of people have stayed for 18 months now, so it's a good place. It's a cool place to hang out.
Cool. Okay, team. So first of all, congratulations for preparing your course. I'm really happy for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much for coming, for sharing your wisdom with us, and I hope people will connect with you. So guys, you will find all the links how to connect with team below this video. And yeah, so thank you very much, team, and thank you very much, Alva, for the amazing hosting, and thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.
Have a beautiful weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.